Hi, and welcome back. We are finally live here in the studio here with Ira Winderman. It has been a while.
Yes.
The last time we talked, you were in Cleveland and Dwayne Wade was still wearing a Cavaliers jersey. And now, as we know, he's back with the Heat, which is, I don't know if anyone was really expecting it to happen this soon. I was lucky enough to be with you at American Airlines Arena.
Interesting day.
Yeah, his first media appearance. And it just, for me, and I mean, the room was packed. Everyone was so excited about it. But it just seemed like Dwayne Wade felt like he was home. Like, this is where it's meant to be, and he was relaxed, and it just seemed like business as usual for everyone there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That was the emotional part of it. That part of this is important. That part of this is almost good to have gotten out of the way. So when you look at it now and you go forward now it could become a basketball story. Now it could become a basketball issue, and I think that's the important part. I think the All-Star break actually, EmmaKate, happened at a good time, because it allowed the Heat to get through the emotion of, wow, that's Dwayne Wade in the Heat uniform. Wow, that's Dwayne Wade on the court for the Heat. Even in Philadelphia last week, wow, that's Dwayne Wade again trying to take winning shots. So you have that all in play as far as Dwayne coming back. Then now you get to the point where you have this 8-day All-Star break. So now you look at a situation where you can say, okay, the emotion can be taken out of the equation. We now can look at Dwayne Wade, the basketball player, at 36, 37 years old. How does he fit into the equation? And when you look at his numbers, if we can go to this chart from his first 3 games with the Miami Heat, the one thing we're seeing right now is this is someone, well, we kind of figure his numbers. You know, we figure when it comes to his playing time, it's going to be about in the 20-minute range. The performances have been up and down. Obviously, the record not where the Heat wanted. That great emotional boost the day you were at the arena when they beat the Milwaukee Bucks. They go into Toronto and Philadelphia. They played competitively. You see some of the numbers. You see what he's capable of. In the game against Toronto, he gets the double-double. That he still can give you points. He can still give you rebounds. He can still give you assists. What I haven't shown on this chart is his turnovers. And in 2 of the games, he had 4 turnovers. That's what the Heat can have. Again, is that a question of a little too reckless, or is that a question of getting in sync with his teammates? So when you sort of look at Dwayne and you look at his first couple of games, maybe we can go to some of the photos here of his initial time with the Heat, you can see a player who obviously is getting involved and enjoying himself. There's a joy back to Dwayne Wade, even more than getting to play in those Miami Vice uniforms.
Which are awesome. I might have to order one.
You know, and that's the thing is, and people are already saying, I want my number 3 Dwayne Wade Vice uniform. They're saying they might not be ready till June. I think they have to rush that up a little more. Yeah. They'll be playing in them the rest of this week, all next week. You can see the leadership aspect there. You can see the athleticism there. What you can't see, and EmmaKate, what we won't see, is 2006 Dwayne Wade, is 2011, 12, 13, 14, big 3 Dwayne Wade. I mean, he looks older. We all look older. I understand that. I'm doing 30 years of Heat on this show. I look older. The thing is for the Miami Heat to sort of reach a compromise where they can say, okay, we have Dwayne Wade back, but we have 36-year-old, 2018 Dwayne Wade. We have to work from there. If the expectations are of more, which I think they are from his teammates, I think that's going to be a problem. And we saw that in the Philadelphia game at times. We saw it in the Toronto game. Teammates stopped. Because when a singular great star has the ball, the natural inclination is, I'm going to turn into a spectator. I'm going to watch the great Dwayne Wade play. That can't be the case, because this will sound cold, EmmaKate, but if I were to rate the Miami Heat players right now in terms of best to worst, Dwayne probably wouldn't be in my top 5, might not be in my top 7. That's not saying he's not going to the Hall of Fame and he's not going to be in Springfield. But at the moment right now, these players have to decide. It's hard for Josh Richardson to say, yeah, I'm better than Dwayne Wade. I mean, it sounds almost wrong, but it has to be that way for this team. There have to be certain players, Goran Dragic. When Dwayne was previously here, he deferred so much to Dwayne. He can't do that anymore. So to me, EmmaKate, it comes down to this. Dwayne Wade right now is a complimentary player for the Miami Heat. The question is how complimentary. We'll find that out over these remaining 24 games.
Absolutely. It's like, you know, he's thrown back into the mix after being in Chicago and Cleveland, and you know, it's some new guys, some old guys. It's not all going to click right away. They got to make it all work.
And especially now the role he's playing, where he's playing as a reserve. I'm not sure that's going to continue, because now that we get Rodney McGruder back, hopefully Kelly Olynyk back, Eric Spoelstra constantly has changed his lineups. 18 or 19 lineups already this season. There was a stretch the Heat went 5 consecutive games with a different lineup. So they certainly are positioned to maybe do that again. But if he does play with the second unit, it's really important for those second unit guys to come together and say, hey, this is who we want to be. The second unit, you might remember, before Dwayne arrived, had a nickname. They were the Platinum Group. When the Heat was winning 9 of 11 games, they were terrific. Bam Adebayo off the bench. James Johnson was off the bench at the time. They were playing so well. So can they get back to being a platinum group plus an all-time Hall of Famer? That's where they have to go with Dwayne. Again, 8-day break for the All-Star break. At least mentally you could figure it out. But only 24 games left after the All-Star break. A real sprint to the finish.
Absolutely. So Wade has been playing a lot of point guard lately. So how is that?
Well, I mean, it's just interesting because Dwayne is playing point guard right now, and you can understand what he does best. He is a facilitator. He's someone who can get them into offense. Matter of fact, I would make an argument right now that Dwayne Wade is the best pure playmaker on this roster. Yeah. Goran Dragic is a scoring point guard. They don't have a true NBA backup point guard. I think Dwayne can do that very well. But again, it goes back to what I said. If you're a distributor, the other guys have to be moving. They have to be able to let you make plays for them. If they're all standing there wide-eyed and going, wow, that's Dwayne Wade over there, that's not going to work. Yeah. And also, Dwayne, if he's going to be a facilitator and going to be a playmaker, he has to be someone who has to be much more in tune with the players. The problem is this. There's not a lot of practice time in the NBA. With the new schedule and you're playing, it's travel, it's a day off. The Heat now have, starting Saturday, a 5-game homestand, which allows them for practice. Dwayne Wade might have played before with Josh Richardson and Tyler Johnson and some of the others on this roster, but not since those players have changed and improved. So yes, I think Dwayne as backup point guard works. The one area it doesn't work, EmmaKate, and I think this is interesting, is the defensive point guard on the second unit. Dwayne at 36 is not going to guard those really quick point guards. I think that's still what the Heat lack. I think you could see a lot of times Dwayne will be cast as point guard on offense, but I think on defense he might wind up guarding opposing shooting guards or even small forwards.
So how might the return of Rodney McGruder impact Wade in his role?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You only have so many minutes for so many players. When Dwayne joined the team, 9-man rotation. To me, that's about the maximum. So if you're factoring Kelly Olynyk coming back and you're factoring in Rodney McGruder coming back, I don't think you can play 11 deep. It's like that old saying in football, when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. You have to know what your rotation is. This is when Eric Spoelstra has to decide. Does it mean playing Dwayne ahead of Rodney McGruder? Even after Rodney's worked 4 months coming back from his preseason leg surgery, does it mean playing him ahead of Justice Winslow? If you remember, Justice Winslow was brought into the guy to sort of follow Dwayne, be the next Dwayne Wade. That didn't work out. Does James Johnson lose some of his minutes? Wayne Ellington is a specialist. Does he lose some minutes? Eric Spoelstra has to figure this all out. Rodney McGruder is part of that equation. I think Rodney deserves to play because he's a defender. He's a better three-point shooter than almost anyone outside of Wayne Ellington, maybe in Kelly Olynyk on this roster. So yeah, these are the tough decisions that Eric Spoelstra has to play. And as odd as it sounds, Rodney, we haven't even heard a lot about, a McGruder, and Dwayne, I'm going to the Hall of Fame. Wade, the two of them still could wind up very much fighting for minutes in a very even race for playing time.
Do we have any idea or update of when McGruder will come back? Have they given us any indication?
He practiced full for the team before they left on their 2-game trip. Okay. He then was with the team in Toronto, with the team in Philadelphia. I would be shocked. I'd put it at 99% that he'll be available Friday in New Orleans. Now, whether he plays or not is another question. That's a rotation question. But Rodney McGruder, again, will be part of the mix. Kelly Olynyk, I'm not quite as sure with the shoulder. He's missed 4 games. The thing I love about social media is I saw on his Snapchat and his Instagram he was out partying and having a good time on the beach during the All-Star break. So I assume if you could do that, his shoulder wasn't in a sling. It's almost like you get to be voyeurs and you get to sort of spy on the guy. So Kelly looks good enough to come back. So again, I think the Heat will be bolstered. But you know what? You can be bolstered and you have to still get it right. So to me, there's 11 players available. There's really 8 or 9 at the max you want to play in the rotation. This is Eric Spoelstra's time right here.
Oh yeah, a lot of big decisions to make. Let's move into a few questions from the mailbag.
Sure.
You have a lot of questions we haven't answered them for a while. All right, Len asks, so with Dwayne Wade back, does this mean there's a chance for LeBron James next?
And it was interesting. We had a story at sunsentinel.com the other day. They polled 48 NBA players, and they said if LeBron, what's going to happen with him in the offseason? Most of the players said they expected him back in Cleveland. Yet the third choice on that list was the Miami Heat, which I found fascinating. And they said, which player would LeBron want to play most with in the NBA? And Dwayne Wade was the third player on that list. Personally, I do not see it happening. The way that he left, the success that he's had in Cleveland, the fact that he's been in the NBA Finals now the last 7 straight seasons, and let's be honest, let's look at this Heat roster. It didn't work out well with Dwayne when they played this season, first half of the season in Cleveland. There's not exactly the kind of talent where you say to yourself, wow, I want to go be with those guys. LeBron's been linked to Houston and playing with Chris Paul, to Philadelphia and playing there with Ben Simmons and with Joel Embiid. Maybe even the Lakers because of the promise of Lonzo Ball. The one linchpin that the Heat had, EmmaKate, was Hassan Whiteside. And I thought even at the start of the season, he would be a player you say to yourself, I want to play with, he can help me. Well, he's not even playing that much right now. And he hasn't been an all-star. He wasn't an all-star this year. I don't know if the Heat have the kind of player where LeBron says, I'm interested. I know there's the Pat Riley factor and this thought. If LeBron can go back and play for Dan Gilbert, then whatever issues he had with Pat Riley, he could overcome. But folks, I think that is the longest of long shots right now. I think if you're looking for free agent signings for the Heat in the offseason, maybe bring the expectations down just a little.
Well, they don't really have the cash to sign him either. They'd
have to work out a trade and call their good buddy Dan Gilbert and probably offer either Goran Dragic, more likely Hassan Whiteside, maybe Bam Adebayo. There's so many hoops that they'd have to jump through, whereas opposed to LeBron, if he wants to go to the Lakers, the cap space is already there. If he wants to go to the Clippers, they could lose DeAndre Jordan, the cap space would be there. If he wants to go to the Rockets, they might have enough pieces with Ryan Anderson to make a deal. It's a long shot. You've had your 4 years, South Florida. I think you just should cherish those.
However, it's LeBron, so you can't
yes.
never say never.
Yes,
you
because
never know what he's going to do.
The decision in 2010, we were all there when he went up to the youth club in Connecticut, and all of a sudden, oh, so he's playing here? And then even in July 2014, when he went back to Cleveland, not as many people saw that. So you're right. Until LeBron tells us what he's doing, all of free agent will stop. LeBron will make his decision, then we'll pick up in an orderly fashion after that in July.
Yeah, we'll have to see. But I agree with you. It doesn't look too likely to me. But, again, you never know. All right, Jim in Miami says, chaos will break out when Dion Waiters returns next year. How do you solve this problem?
It's interesting because remember, when Dwayne Wade left the first time, Dion Waiters came in, and when healthy last season was very good for the Heat. The thing is, we know right now Dion Waiters is out for the balance of the season. He had that ankle surgery in January. The league said he's definitively out to the point where they gave him a $5.5 million injured player exception, so we haven't seen any more. I'm not so sure that Dwayne Wade could coexist, or more to the point, EmmaKate, that's actually wrong, that Dion Waiters could coexist with Dwayne Wade. When Dwayne resigned, Dion Waiters sent out all the niceties on social media, welcome back, you're the OG, I can't wait to see and be with you. But this was going to be Dion Waiters' chance to be the man, to emerge. Last season, who took every big shot for the Heat practically? Dion Waiters. Start of this season, big game in Utah, they need a shot at the end. Who took it? Dion Waiters. And yet we looked the other day in Philadelphia. He needs a late shot. Who takes it? Dwayne Wade. This is a later rather than now story for this one reason. We don't know if Dwayne's coming back for another season. I really think these final 24 games will have Dwayne decide, is this an emotional reunion where I can move past the emotion and contribute for another year at 37 years old, or do I let it be Dion's team? But it's very interesting. Dion has been totally away from the team. We were up in Philadelphia, Dion's home. We saw all his Philadelphia rooting for the Eagles during the Super Bowl. Never saw Dion Waiters. I thought he might stop by at the locker room either in Philly, back when the team's in Miami. That is a little curious, but you know what? EmmaKate, the Heat have so many concerns at the moment. I think they'll say, hey, let's worry about next season's problems next season.
So will Waiters' injury concern, will that be a problem moving forward?
I think it will. I mean, I think in that Dwayne Wade is perfect Dion Waiters insurance. So the Heat, because Dion's under contract, they can look at him in June and July, maybe even August, and say, hey, this hasn't healed 100%. The window we've been given is he should be ready for the start of training camp, but you're never fully sure. So would Dwayne Wade be willing to come back until Dion Waiters is fully healthy? The one thing I don't see in someone like Dwayne Wade is coming back and retiring in November or December. It just doesn't have the right look for an all-star. That really makes it look like you're walking into the sunset. So I do think Dwayne waits to see how Dion stands, and I think there almost has to be a summit with Dion, with Dwayne, and with Eric Spoelstra. Can we all get together here? Might we trade another player, Tyler Johnson, make another move? Or else they got to find a way to make it work. I think that's later rather than sooner. And again, Since Dion has been injured, we've never seen the same player. So we have to make sure he can even get back to that point.
Absolutely. All right, we'll take one more question now. And
sure.
As always, submit more questions. We're getting some in now, and we'll answer them towards the end of the show. All right, Daniel says, this two-center approach is highly situational, right? Can't imagine it for long stretches against small, fast lineups.
Well, we've seen it a little bit. Eric Spoelstra spoke about it before the Rockets game, didn't implement it in that one. The Heat this season are 7-1 when Bam Adebayo and Hassan Whiteside play together in the same game. So you have that. They've only played about 50 total minutes together, but they also have a negative rating overall when the two are on the court. So again, in this era of sabermetrics and analytics, which number means more? The 7-1 winning record, the plus minus when they're on the court together, what happens? All I know is this. If Kelly Olynyk is coming back, and Bam Adebayo has been a revelation this season, and Hassan Whiteside is still making, last time I checked, $98 million, you've got to find a way to get two big men on the court. You could have changed that at the trading deadline. You could have made a move. The Heat didn't. There are no more trades. Hassan, Bam, Kelly Olynyk, none of them are going anywhere this season. So I think the only way to make it work is to play them together. Make other teams match up to you. The Heat's been a little bit reluctant, but I'll tell you this, EmmaKate. Bam Adebayo can defend anyone, anywhere on the court. He is that athletic. He is that quick. If he has to guard a quicker power forward, maybe a small forward, I think he can do it. It's a matter of, does Eric Spoelstra want to get even more unconventional when every game matters so much?
Yeah, you mentioned this. It seems like there's been so much talk of Whiteside and Adebayo on the court together, but they really haven't even played together that much.
It's been so minimal together that I don't think Eric Spoelstra really has an idea of, can I go 10, 15, 20 minutes together in a game? On one hand, I think you would catch opponents off guard. They would just say, whoa, we haven't seen this from the Heat. On the other hand, the way the game is downsizing right now, if ever there wasn't a time to have 3 7-footers on your roster who can play in this era of NBA small ball, it's it. But it was really interesting. We spoke to Hassan Whiteside in the locker room after the Heat's last game in Philadelphia, and we said, what's your goal for the second half of the season, the remainder of the season, actually only 24 games? And instead of him saying, win a championship, win more games, make the playoffs, it was, I want to get more minutes. So it's in his head, and he's realizing how limited his minutes are right now. He's playing about 26, Bam's playing about 20, Olynyk about 22 to 24. So they're in that range where you almost can add it up to a game and a half between the three of them. Hassan's not happy. Now, should Hassan, with his play, make them say, we have to play you, like they are, like Bam Adebayo is, or as Eric Spoelstra said, if you're not making me play you, that's fine. I can do it that way also. The Hassan Whiteside story is not going away, and I got a feeling it's going to be one of our lead topics several shows through the rest of the season.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. So again, we'll answer some more questions toward the end of the show, but like we've been doing every week, we're celebrating the 30th anniversary season of the Miami Heat franchise. Ira's been there for them all, but again, you started when you were 12.
12,
right,
yeah,
right,
so I'm
that's
still in my late 30s right now, so we're good.
So, and like I said, each week we've been going through the top 10 of something. So, Ira, what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, it was interesting, EmmaKate. Last time I was on with you, we were in Cleveland, and we just got the incredibly sad news that Rasul Butler, one of the really special players in the history of the Miami Heat, was driving in Los Angeles. His car got out of control. He crashed. He and his wife died. Several Heat people went up to the memorial service in Philadelphia at LaSalle University. And during that period between now and then, I sort of said to myself, what really made Rasul Butler stand out was that he was selected late in the second round of his draft when he first joined the Heat, when he came in with Caron Butler, and how much that second round picks really can make a difference. Everyone goes, oh, it's the NBA, it's all about the first round, you don't find anyone. So today's list I want to dedicate to Rasul Butler, and I want to look at the Heat's all-time top second round picks. So we'll go three at a time and discuss some of the names here. So working backwards to our climactic finish, starting with James Ennis. He was a draft pick actually of the Atlanta Hawks. The Heat traded for him. He spent a year in Australia, but right now he's first with the Memphis Grizzlies, then they moved him on, and he got traded again to the Detroit Pistons. A really athletic prospect. One of those guys the Heat simply didn't have the time to fit in. Another guy, Rodney Buford. The Heat selected him. Really good outside shooters, had some off-the-court issues. including when the whatever sniffing dogs in Toronto pulled him off the Heat plane one time when he had to be sent home because apparently hiding things in aluminum foil isn't good enough for those dogs. That's another story for another day. And one of my favorites and least favorite, Patrick Beverley. The Heat made a trade to acquire him on draft night. They brought him into 2 training camps. He went overseas 1 year. They brought him back into their camp. They decided the second time they're going to keep an older Eddie House, we'll get to that name at another point, instead of Patrick Beverley. I saw him this year at the Clippers game out in Los Angeles at Staples Center. He came up to me, and I still, EmmaKate, to this moment, don't know what he meant. And he goes, I remember that story you wrote about me. I'll never forget it. Walked into the training room, slammed the door. Thankfully, I'm done with Clippers games for the seasons, but I will say this. He is a special defensive pest, and because he's lasted so long, it really shows you that really is a second-round pick that the Heat did wisely trading for, not wisely letting get away.
So he never... technically, he never played for the Heat.
Right.
Is that right?
He got 2 full years of salary. They knew he was so much of a prospect. They paid him for 2 years not to play with him. And then you could see it since. We've seen what he's done with Houston, that defensive pest. We've seen what he's done with the Clippers until he had a season-ending injury. I had nothing to do with that this season. And you can also see, like we were talking with Dwayne, the thing the Heat need is that defensive point guard against those sort of whippersnapper kind of guys. That's what they lacked, and that's sort of what they went away from in not having someone like Patrick Beverley. If they had a player like this on their roster right now, I think they could have wound up in a lot better shape than where they are when they play a quick point guard. They don't have someone like Patrick Beverley. So, again, a smart second-round draft choice, but also one that got away. And you could see going forward, the Heat are still looking for a Patrick Beverley type of player. Yeah. So we'll move on to our next 3 on our list, going 7 to 5. At number 7, Matt Geiger, the Heat took out of Georgia Tech, a time they really needed a center. And again, you can contribute in many ways in the NBA. And one of them you can is simply by being a piece that your team can turn to something else. He was the center traded for Alonzo Mourning. So if there was no Matt Geiger in the second round that year, there might not have been any Alonzo Mourning trade to make. Our favorite, Eddie House, Pat Riley's daughter, Elizabeth, free Eddie House, get him out there to shoot more three-pointers. And he was the kind of guy, you know what? He was a little ahead of his time, EmmaKate. Because if you had a three-point shooter like that right now, he would have been even more of a player. And then the player we spoke about, and what we saw from Rasul Butler, just the nicest guy I have been around in the locker room. That year, they took Caron Butler in the first round. Caron Butler left the team, went in the Shaquille O'Neal trade. Rasul Butler was playing in the NBA until his late 30s. This past summer, Rasul Butler played in the Big Three half-court league. He would go anywhere and everywhere to play basketball. And I've got to tell you, and I know you saw this also, upon his passing, I don't know if there was a player in the NBA, almost past or present, who didn't mention, if they were a teammate, what it was like playing with him.
Absolutely. It just, social media erupted with well wishes. He was such an impact. I mean, at pick number 53, and he had such an impact.
And that's the thing. That's when the Heat needed players. They were in one of their sort of down cycles and missed the playoffs for 2 years. So they went out there and just, again, this story of this player. His name is not Rasul Butler. His name is Felix Cheeseborough. When he was raised in Philadelphia, he had such a hard-scrapple youth that he decided, I am going to change my life. I am going to change my name. He wound up with an adoptive family. He came into the NBA, and he said at the end, I will do anything and everything for your team. I will play with the Pacers. I will play with the Wizards. I will play with the Spurs. I want to play NBA basketball. And I got to tell you this, even when he passed with this incident, I think he would have tried to get back into the NBA. I think he's the kind of player that would have played into his 40s simply because of the joy of being around other NBA players. How do you play into your 40s in the NBA? You're a good guy. You're not a problem in the locker room. You're the kind of player when you get on the team playing, everyone's going, hey, I'm going to go talk to Rasul and get some guidance, get some mentorship. Yeah. So to me, it really was a tragedy on that level, losing a player like that.
I mean, you love to watch and cheer for guys who just love the game and want to play because they love it.
And that's why his funeral at LaSalle University in Philadelphia really was so emotional, and that's why he really will be missed. Moving down our list here, a familiar name. You know, when you go, what have you done right recently? Josh Richardson. And we've spoken about him all season. Here's the interesting thing to me, EmmaKate. If we were to flip-flop draft choices in that 2015 draft, and Josh Richardson went at number 10, and Justice Winslow went at number 40, we go, that's a good draft. Right now, Josh Richardson's playing like a lottery pick. Justice Winslow probably playing like a second-round pick. So it really is a matter of, it doesn't matter what you do in the first or second round. It matters you come out of the draft with something special. The Heat accomplished that in 2015 with Josh Richardson. Sherman Douglas, another player at the outset of the franchise. They needed a point guard. They needed the general to come down from Syracuse. Rory Sparrow was here the first year. They wanted someone you could sort of emotionally get attached to. Well, let's face it, there's so many New Yorkers down here. There's so many people who followed the Big East. That's what Sherman Douglas offered the Heat. And then we look at Mario Chalmers. Again, we talk about flip-flopping picks. 2008 draft, the Heat have a lottery pick. They go for Michael Beasley. Later in the draft, they trade for the rights to Mario Chalmers, and yet he was the guy, not Michael Beasley, for those 4 Big 3 runs to 4 straight NBA Finals to 2 championship. It was Mario Chalmers, who you, 1, found at point guard the whole time, and 2, who LeBron James liked to yell at a lot. So you had those 2 factors there also. So he, again, made himself special even in the second round.
Yeah, and like you said, that draft was supposed to be all about Michael Beasley. He was their first-round pick, and it ended up being Chalmers, who was really the key piece.
And the thing about Chalmers is he understood his place. Remember where he came from. Kansas, his last year. They were going to lose the national championship game playing at San Antonio. They need a three-pointer. He steps into the shot, hits that shot, the Jayhawks go on to the championship. So he's already a player who had championship pedigree when he came to the NBA. But he was also smart enough to realize that even though I came in with Michael Beasley and a ragtag team, once we got Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade was still there, and we had LeBron James, I'll take a secondary role. I'll shoot three-pointers. I'll stay out of the way. This sounds kind of weird, but I'm not sure if the Miami Heat didn't have Mario Chalmers, they get to those 4 NBA Finals. Because sometimes you need complementary pieces as much as you need main pieces. And like I joked about, LeBron was always yelling at Mario about being in the wrong place and doing the wrong thing. You know something, EmmaKate? You have to be the right kind of player to put up with that and to accept that and to not go back at LeBron. So people can go, oh, he's soft, he took it. No, he understood what his role was. And I got to tell you, I think the Miami Heat, when they had to cut their luxury tax and lose Mario Chalmers, I think they lost a little bit of their soul. I think he meant that much to the team during those 4 runs to the NBA Finals.
Absolutely. All right, who do we got?
Here we go,
Number 1.
the grand unveiling. And to me, it came at the start in the second round. And the interesting thing about the Miami Heat, when they started in 1988, there were actually 3 rounds of the draft. Grant Long and what he delivered to this team. You know, I'm going to have coming up, as a matter of fact, in this Sunday's Sun Sentinel, I think I should be able to pronounce that by now, and even today online, if you go to sunsentinel.com, I'm listing my all-time Heat culture players, and you will see Grant Long on that list also. And people think, whoa, Heat culture, that began with Pat Riley in 1995? No, that began with a player who said, I am going to be a gritty, hardworking player, come to Miami in 1988 as a second-round pick, and stay in the NBA for 15 or 16 seasons. Right now, Grant Long is a television analyst for the Detroit Pistons. He's still around the game. If you're asking me about Heat players who made the most for the Heat and in their careers with the least, I would put there with Grant Long. Don't ever undersell hustle. And to me, he's the perfect example of that.
Yeah, and he spent his first 7 NBA seasons with the Heat, and he had the longest tenure of any Heat player drafted in the second round, which is pretty impressive.
And that's the thing. So it's not like they took a guy because they were desperate and it was a year or 2 or something like that. He made himself into something of value. So valuable that he was traded with Steve Smith for Kevin Willis. Not one of the best deals. I think in our all-time worst deals, we touched on that also. That's the thing. If you become a player who got away, who became part of a mistake trade, that tells you how valuable that player was also.
Absolutely. Thanks again for doing this, going back to the history of the Heat. That one was
so much there.
Especially that one, too.
And all these photo galleries at sunsentinel.com. If I say that right, we have one up right now, and they will remain up through the rest of the seasons. We look back on these 30 seasons.
Awesome. So let's take a moment now to look ahead at the upcoming schedule. And on this upcoming schedule, some probably must-win games.
Yes.
So what are you looking at?
EmmaKate, I like how you phrase that. Must-win games and not winnable games. And that's the difference. The Memphis Grizzlies come in here to American Airlines Arena on Saturday. Right now, they'll be coming off a game against Cleveland, which probably is not going to be a victory. Right now, as we tape this, they're on a 7-game losing streak. So you're the Miami Heat, and you say to yourself, fine. That game on Saturday starts a 5-game homestand. We're going to get on a roll. Here's the problem, EmmaKate. There have been so many times that the Heat have had winnable games at home. The Nets, the Kings, so many other games during the season, Orlando Magic, that they've lost. This is when it has to start. This is when the Heat have to say, we are going to take every game seriously. We're going to appreciate every game. You look at the Heat schedule to close the season. 24 games left, 15 at home. That's favorable. Yeah. Except they're not very good at home. They're only 2 games over 500. You look at their remaining schedule, you say 12 against winning teams, 12 against losing teams. So you should win at least half your games. The Heat, as you know, have had some horrible losses. Not even the home games there. Losses to Atlanta, losses to New York, losses to Chicago. The point I made by featuring this game against Memphis is this. If the Heat are who we think they are and who they think they are, then these upcoming games against the Grizzlies, against the Lakers, against the Suns, all on this upcoming 5-game homestand, they have to be victories. And when you look back, EmmaKate, there was a recent game against the Sacramento Kings. Sacramento was trying to lose. They didn't play Vince Carter in that game. They were playing young players. They're part of this year's Tankapalooza. And the Heat found a way to lose that game. And after the game, Goran Dragic said, Erik Spoelstra came in and said, we took them too lightly. We got too full of ourselves. But I got to tell you this, a team coming out of the All-Star break with 7 losses in 8 games, only 2 games over 500, only 1.5 games out of being out of the playoffs, they have to take every game seriously. I am really curious. Yes, it's the second night of a back-to-back. They're playing Friday in New Orleans, home Saturday. They've got to come out with a hunger that those games are as big as the great showings that they showed playing Cleveland competitive, winning in Toronto early this season, winning in Boston. They have to understand there are no easy games for them. There are no insignificant games for them.
Absolutely. And I feel like we've been talking about this before. This isn't a new thing. And we're like, you guys have to win these games, and they haven't been doing it. So hopefully they're renewed and rejuvenated after this All-Star break and, like you said, come out with the hunger.
And they have to be. It's like I wish we could almost show the other part of the studio here. We have a couch sitting over there to EmmaKate's left. It's almost like you feel like you should bring in all the Heat players, put them on the couch, and sit down with them and almost give them a psychiatric review, because the bottom line is this. These players are good enough to win at least half of their games the rest of the season. Will 42-40 be good enough for the playoffs? Maybe. I can tell you this. I think 44-38 definitely will be good enough. So really, if they just win 1 or 2 more games than expected the rest of the season, they should be in the playoffs. If not, I think they got a lot of splaining to do.
Exactly. So the Grizzlies, earlier this season, they fired Erik Spoelstra's close friend,
another good point.
David Fizdale. So is there a revenge factor there, or how?
No, I think that's a really good point. When we were in Memphis the first time, it was shortly after David Fizdale, Erik Spoelstra's long time. Matter of fact, it reached the point where they called him associate head coach, not even assistant coach, because he was that much sort of Erik Spoelstra's main right-hand, left-hand guy, however you want to look at it. Since then, David Fizdale has been down at American Airlines Arena. He took Erik Spoelstra's Pepper Challenge for ALS. He's been involved with that, so they're very close, the two of them. And I do agree, EmmaKate, after someone does wrong by one of your friends, I think the natural inclination is to make the other team pay a little also. So yeah, I think this still remains a payback game. I think this means more to Erik Spoelstra and all the players who were here when David Fizdale was a Heat assistant.
And another familiar name, Mario Chalmers, who we just talked about. Yeah. He'll be coming back to AAA. Does this still resonate with the Heat?
Yeah, I think it does. And again, I think people realize, like we said, when you win championships, you're a championship-winning guard. They understood because of the luxury tax, but also he missed a full year with a torn Achilles. So he's out of the league. The Grizzlies brought him back. Look, we talk about Heat culture. We talk about perseverance. To me, that's another story of a guy who went above and beyond. No, there will not be a video tribute. This is not his first game back. But I still think he's a meaningful part of the Heat. And I would hope Heat fans would respect that as well when he gets out onto the court, because of all the kidding we said about LeBron giving him a hard time and saying he's in the wrong place. When you appear in 4 NBA Finals for a team, your number might not go up to the rafters, but I think you should always remain appreciated.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll be looking forward to that game Saturday at American Airlines. So let's go back to a few more of your questions from Ask Ira, our website and everything like that. All right, so this one's interesting because I think in a lot of your writing you talk about the lack of roster spots and things because there aren't many. So how about this? Mitch says, can we acknowledge there's no reason to keep re-signing Haslem? If he's that big a locker room presence, put him in a suit on the bench. He keeps their roster from preventing to get other guys on the floor who can contribute.
You know what? That's one of those things we dance around. And because I respect and like UD as much as I do, I dance around that also. And when we talk about our ultimate all-time Heat culture guys, you probably could guess who's on the top of the list. That's at sunsentinel.com right now. all of that said, I think you can get by the rest of this year. Remember, they have the salary cap exception for Dion Waiters. That expires on March 13th. So if they want to bring in a player, they have to cut a player. I think where they are right now, they could probably cut Jordan Mickey and be okay. He rarely plays anyway. But EmmaKate, next season, if Dwayne Wade comes back, if Dion Waiters is healthy, I think Dwayne Wade takes on the Udonis Haslem assistant coach's player role. I don't think you can have two such players. So I would hope that there would be the proper kind of exit. Maybe a Heat assistant coach moves on to another team. Maybe Juwan Howard gets a head coaching job somewhere else. But I would be very surprised with this team's need to get younger, whether Udonis Haslem comes back for another season. And I do think there's an outside chance if they spend that exception that Udonis might be sort of shuffled off a little now also, but more next season than this season.
And like you said, kind of Dwayne Wade looks like he can be that voice, that veteran presence. That
and he already is. And that's the thing. Is you have three tri-captains right now, Udonis Haslem, James Johnson, Goran Dragic. Dwayne isn't one of them. Don't kid yourself. Dwayne Wade is as much a captain in that locker room for these remaining 24 games as any player who wears that C in his chest and carries that title with him.
All right. Leonard says, fans expect way too much from Adebayo. At UK, schedule was 40 games. The NBA demands a lot more at 82 games. Bam gets lost on the court due to inexperience. Rooks like Karl Anthony Towns and Kristaps Porzingis still learning. Wade needed Shaq to lead the way. Hassan's problems. Bam isn't ready until he's ready.
That's a really good point. People forget how young he is. That even in their expulsion, Pat Riley said, you're talking 20, 21 years old, you're still learning. Bam gets lost a lot on defense, but he can compensate with his athleticism, with his ability to learn. But that's a really good point. That he plays a lot of systematic defense, and we're seeing a lot of times where Bam is shaking his head and Eric Spoelstra's putting the palms up like that. He's still learning. EmmaKate, I think that's a really good question on another level. The Heat have those 24 games left. We went over the standings, how every game will matter. This is no time for development or learning on the job. So I agree there with the questioner that if Eric Spoelstra has to put out players that are NBA ready now, you might see Bam's minutes be cut down a little, especially in those late game tight situations. You can develop next season. You can learn next season. Every game, the most important factor now has to be, how do we get that W?
Ooh, this is another interesting one.
I always hate when you go, ooh, but go ahead.
I don't know what you'll think about this. Okay, Sean says, was bringing Wade back a mistake? Yes, I know he's a Heat legend and should be remembered as such, but he takes minutes away from other guys and doesn't particularly defend well, and seems to be trying to force the issue as a playmaker when that's not really what we need. I mean, it's only been 3 games. I don't know if we can really judge yet.
And that's what I said. I understand. The way this broke, I think, was perfect. You play 3 emotional games when you come back, and then you have an 8-day break. Then everyone exhales. Now, I'm not saying that he doesn't get cheered when he's back on the court Saturday at American Airlines Arena against the Grizzlies, but this is what I'm trying to say about everything. Now it's about business. It all has to be about business, the business of winning. So if Dwayne has another one of those 4 turnover games, you yank him. You don't say to yourself, well, that's our Hall of Fame player. And Dwayne has to understand that also, that Dwayne is here to contribute. Some days contributing might be 30 minutes and needed to score, getting one of those double-doubles like he did against Toronto. And you know what, EmmaKate? Some games against more athletic and younger and quicker and running teams, it might be 10 minutes or 8 minutes or no minutes. He has to be ready to accept that also. The emotional part, for me, I would hope for him, is gone. Now it has to be about winning. And I think Eric Spoelstra, it's going to be difficult. This is someone who helped Eric Spoelstra, once as an assistant coach, twice as a head coach, win NBA championships. But that's a really good question, and I think it's important for everyone. Step back from the emotion. It has to be about winning. Dwayne Wade is one of 15 players in this team. Unfortunately, right now, nothing more. You have to contribute to play.
Exactly. Okay. Keith says, if Heat miss the playoffs again, will they finally go with young talent instead of veterans?
Well, you know what? That might be the logical thing to say, that, hey, we need to renew. But EmmaKate, keep this in mind. The Heat owe 2 first-round picks right now to the Phoenix Suns from the Goran Dragic trade. Their first-round pick this year, unless it's among the first 7, goes to the Suns. Their 2021 first-round pick, regardless of where it falls, goes to the Suns. There's not a pipeline. It's not like you can say, we're going to step back and bring in a bunch of younger guys. Their younger guys are here right now. They're Tyler Johnson, they're Josh Richardson, they're Bam Adebayo. There's enough youth. Derek Jones Jr., two-way player, we haven't spoken a lot about. Even Derek Walton up in Sioux Falls. So I think there's enough of a mix. Hassan in NBA playing time is a relatively young player. So really is Kelly Olynyk. But no, you're not going to see a Sixers-like youth movement because youth movement are counting on draft choices, and those are draft choices, even second round, that the Heat don't have right now.
All right, Ira, do you have a few more questions in you?
Yeah, you know what? We've been away for a couple of weeks, so why not?
Okay. All right, Ivan says, why can't they send Justice to the G League? He can get consistent minutes and regain his confidence. I don't see how he's helping the team right now.
Well, first of all, there can't be anything that would drain your confidence quicker than going to the right. G League and spending time in Sioux Falls. He's at an age and a pedigree. That doesn't matter right now. But I think it's going to be, can he mentally withstand moving maybe from the starting lineup to an end of the bench role and appreciate that? You know, the numbers are staggering, but they're right there. The Heat have been a much, much, much better team when Justice hasn't played. And when he's been available, not with that shoulder injury, not with the time he missed this season, they've lost. If the Heat can say to themselves, we can't make it work right now with Justice, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, look, he's still a talent. We have to find a way to ingrate him into the system, make him work better, maybe just not this season. Again, I can't stress this enough. It's 24 games now. When we come back next week, it'll be 18 games. Every game matters, and winning more than any single personality, than any single ego, is what has to matter the most.
All right. Jason says, Ira, it seems that the offseason will be interesting when it comes to signing Dwayne Wade. The Heat would appear to have a fair amount of leverage in future discussions, no?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. They're at a point right now with Dwayne Wade where it comes down to this. He comes back at the minimum or he doesn't come back at all. You cannot use your lone mid-level exception. Right now, the Heat are so close to the luxury tax that they might have to make another player move just to re-sign Wayne Ellington. Wayne Ellington, I understand. He's a unique contributor. We saw him in the three-point contest, almost advanced to the second round. That's different. If this is still about money for Dwayne Wade, then this reunion, EmmaKate, never should have happened. If this is about being back home, Dwayne Wade, he's earned, I think it's something like $180 million already. The minimum is still over $2 million for him. So to me, it's simple as this. Dwayne Wade, are you coming back next season? With the rider on that question of, and are you coming back with the minimum? It's one question. If the answer is yes, that's fine. He comes back if he wants to. But no, you can't go into mid-level. They don't have salary cap space. You can't trade for space, not for a 37-year-old player. I think even Dwayne Wade would appreciate that.
All right, one more question,
Sure.
and then we'll let you go. Head back down to the arena, probably. All right, Charles said, Brandon Jennings to the Heat would work. What do you think? He said he would do a 10-day contract.
And actually, Brandon Jennings right now is with the Milwaukee Bucks G League team, but free to be signed by any NBA team. So the question, EmmaKate, comes down to this. The Heat have a full roster. We've already discussed that. The Heat have a rotation. They can't even find minutes for players. So, one, any player they add right now, to me, would have to be someone that I could definitively say he can crack my top 8. Matter of fact, if he cracks my top 8, then I'm a little bit in trouble. So I apologize for that. Brandon Jennings might have gone to China. He's not that bad of a player. If he cracks my top 8 or top 9, that's one thing. Then I think you're welcome back. If not, if you're going to let a Jordan Mickey go, if you can consider what you might do with Udonis Haslem, then you don't. They have that $5.5 million exception. That puts them cap space-wise probably ahead of every other team, or at least most NBA teams that might make a move. But again, it requires a player move. It requires a rotation move. We'll see who's out there. If a name that helps your team comes out, you do it. As it is, we haven't even discussed this. We'll probably do a special on it. Luke Babbitt joined the Heat the same day Dwayne Wade did.
I know, poor Luke.
I know, poor Luke. Like, we've seen him. We finally saw him against Philadelphia. So if they can't even get Luke Babbitt in right now, you better be a special player who can crack the rotation in order for the Heat to sign you. But again, they applied for that $5.5 million. They have the right to use it. We will know in 3 weeks whether they do.
All right, Ira, any final thoughts you have for us? It was a while since we'd done the show, and anything else that
Well, to me, again, it comes down to the one theme: win the games you're supposed to win. If the Miami Heat win every game they are favored in the balance of the season, and nothing more, nothing spectacular, that will put them in the playoffs. But if we see those losses to Brooklyn and to Sacramento and to Atlanta and to New York and to all those craptastic teams, there, I got that word in also, then I think that they'll be in trouble. So it's a matter of, this is so simple. Do your job. And if you do your job, we will have our playoff spectacular when we'll take the show on the road.
Ira will be wearing a Miami Vice jersey.
And it'll be totally spectacular. So right there, they'll finally be in stock. I don't even know what number I'm wearing. So to me, it's that simple, EmmaKate. Do what you're supposed to do, win the games you're supposed to win, and we'll be having playoff editions as well.
And we want to be here for that, so we hope it happens. Ira, thanks again for coming in the studio. We always have a blast here talking with you. And as always, follow all of Ira's coverage on sunsentinel.com, and we'll see you next time.